The abrupt repeal of the 3 farm sector reform laws may impact the plan to boost food processing and exports from India. Business Today's Arnab Datta has the story.
आज मैं आपको पूरे देश को ये बताने आया हूं कि हमने 3 कृषि कानूनों को वापस लेने का, रिपील करने का निर्णय लिया है।
The abrupt repeal of the 3 controversial farm laws may have far-fetching implications for the country's food processing sector. The sector involves leading fast-moving consumer goods majors and a market larger than 2.6 lakh crore rupees. Leading companies like Nestle, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Hindustan Unilever, ITC, among others, were ready with plans to leverage the benefits of direct sourcing of farm produce. Experts suggest that multiple aspects directly related to the packaged food and beverages industry now face uncertainty. The newly introduced 10,500 crore rupees production-linked incentive scheme for the food processing sector, aimed to grow farmers' income and expand India's packaged F&B manufacturing base, may have to be recalibrated. According to Confederation of Indian Industries estimates, the implementation of the laws last year had created a lot of traction in procurement of farm produce by industry. In states like Karnataka and Maharashtra, collection centers had been formed and companies were considering expanding such sourcing. The Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry had also lauded the farm laws as much-awaited reforms for the food processing sector. According to FICCI, the laws would have raised productivity, incomes and generated employment. While industry has remained tight-lipped after the announcement by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, past remarks by industry suggest a rethink of business plans may be unavoidable. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
In some good news for equity investors, as per Morgan Stanley, India will continue to outperform other markets driven by a new profit cycle. Morgan Stanley sees the Sensex at 70,000 by December next year, but this will come along with higher relative volatility. In a bull case, Morgan Stanley believes the Sensex could hit 80,000 in 2022 and hover around the 50,000 mark as a bear case. But there are many challenges for the markets ahead. Rising oil prices, potential third wave of COVID, upward inflection in domestic interest rates are some of the hurdles as per Morgan Stanley. Amid the IPO rush on Dalal Street, SEBI has proposed tighter listing rules. The move is aimed to protect small shareholders who are looking to invest in a flurry of new age technology firms listing on the bourses. Here are the proposed changes that may help you as an investor.
With a large number of new age companies making their way to Dalal Street, market regulator, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, has proposed to tighten rules. Looking out for small shareholders, the regulator intends to regulate how companies spend cash raised through IPOs and how quickly big investors can exit. Let's take you through some of the changes that SEBI has proposed. First, a limit will be set on money raised from IPOs that startups can use for mergers and acquisitions. As much as 35% of the IPO issue can be used for inorganic growth initiatives and general corporate purpose. Companies will be required to reveal the portion of the IPO proceeds that are likely to be used. The regulator has also proposed that divestment of stakes by significant shareholders be capped at 50% of the pre-issue holding. The move is aimed at reducing the risk for investors who are investing in the IPOs of new age companies based on their popularity. So will investors benefit? For starters, investors will know how their money will be used. The market watchdog may also increase lock-in period for anchor investors to 90 days in order to provide more confidence to the public. For those startups planning IPOs in the coming days, it will be essential for them to make investors better informed about their business and future plans. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
October retail sales for auto dealers were down 5% year-on-year. The Federation of Automobile Dealers Association, or FADA, has said that this was the worst festive season in a decade. Here's more on the story.
The semiconductor shortage, subdued demand for new entry-level cars and low inventory levels have together given a big jolt to October auto retail sales numbers. As per the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association, during the 42-day festive period, the two-wheeler sales were down 18%, passenger vehicles by 26% and tractors by 23%. However, FADA said that in October the three-wheeler sales went up 73% and commercial vehicles by 26%.
If we see on the October had been not that bad. It's just been 5% minus, and but overall the biggest drawback has come from the two-wheeler, which is does the big volume and has 6 minus. The passenger vehicle, we were expecting we'll see a negative growth because the semiconductor issue is there and the vehicle shortage is happening. So demand is still positive, but because of the supply chain issues, we are seeing this degrowth. But we were expecting some respite in the two-wheeler, which didn't happen. And lucky enough, the commercial vehicle is back in greens and the three-wheeler. So overall, a mixed bag October sales, what we have seen this month.
There has been a backlog of bookings in the passenger vehicle segment, and the supply chain issues have also grappled the industry.
So the demand is high, the order book is also solid. The waiting periods of some vehicle has gone up to now. The base, which was around 1 to 2 months, has gone up to 2 to 4 months. 42 period festive of Navratri and Diwali is the worst of the last decade. And there are news that semiconductor issue of Malaysia is actually sorted. But I feel that will give an effect in another month or so. So I'm not very positive of November wholesales or the dispatches from the manufacturer. The things may improve from December end or January. So not very positive on the coming Christmas sales also.
Given the long-standing issues, sales are expected to be subdued for a little longer. In New Delhi, with Rishabh Mishra, Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
With the rise of social media stars, influencer marketing has exploded over the past several years. Live streaming e-commerce has boomed into a multi-billion-dollar industry in China. Why this exponential rise, and will India also follow suit? Take a look at this special report.
A bunch of Chinese social media stars are making billions by selling products ranging from lipsticks to AirPods. Live streaming e-commerce has been surging dramatically in China. 2 Chinese streamers have sold $3 billion of products in just one day. China's king of lipsticks, Austin Lee and Via, the queen of live streaming, have taken the world of live streaming by storm. Across China's live stream e-commerce is expected to yield a whopping 1.9 trillion yuan this year. In 2020, the gross merchandise value of online streams amounted to around 1.1 trillion yuan. Prior to that, in 2019, a GMV of 451 billion yuan was recorded. The trend of peddling brands on social media is catching up with the Indian market too. According to reports, influencer marketing in India is pegged to a 900 crore rupee market by the end of this year. While India may not have brought rules as stringent as China, as per the new guidelines, influencers have to add a disclosure label to clarify if a post includes paid advertisements. While in China, live streaming e-commerce is a multi-billion-dollar industry, will India be able to catch up soon? Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
Well, it's a market holiday today on account of Gurpurab. Thursday's big market news was the disappointing listing of Paytm. The over 20% fall in shares of 197, the parent entity of Paytm, led to a flood of memes on social media. But not all Paytm investors had reason to be disappointed. Private equity and venture capital firms, including the likes of China's Ant Group and Japan's SoftBank, that sold a part of their stake in the IPO, actually made a killing via the share sale. This because the average cost of all PE VC shareholders combined that sold shares in the issue was less than 800 rupees a share. Analysts believe that Paytm valuations are high considering concerns related to profitability. And this was the very point that Paytm founder and CEO Vijay Shekhar Sharma tackled in an interview with our global business editor Udayan Mukherjee. Here's a slice of that exclusive conversation.
There are many people who analyze Paytm and they believe that you will actually be in a position to show profits in FY24. Some believe that it will not happen before FY25. What's your own assessment? When do you actually start to show profits?
Our few quarters forward numbers are there with us because we see the business day to day and every day. Obviously, thanks to the obligation of audited and obligation of filing certain information, only a selected information, it also makes me understand that we should probably bring a lot more information, a lot more, I would say, business KPIs sooner in public market so that people are able to appreciate what we are talking works out. Exactly for the same spirit, I cannot give you the exact timeline, but I can tell you next few quarters when you see the numbers, you would see a trend line that would give you far bigger comfort of what timeline it would be. I am not going to comment on whether it is 23, whether it is 25, whether it is earlier, whether it is later. I definitely am going to tell you that our next 2 quarters, which sort of we are living through, 1 quarter we are in the process of audit and completing, and we should soon announce that quarter's result, and 2nd quarter that we are actually as a part of subsequent quarter that we are part of right now. Numbers are phenomenally different, which simply should be when they get exposed, publicly announced, they would be far better trend to judge what your question is. I, being a related party and conflicted with this disclosure itself, that I'm not going to give you, I mean, I'm naive enough first entrepreneur first day post listing where I cannot tell you this is a good year to look at it. I definitely can say the numbers are far phenomenally better. Year on year, we, by the way, give 60% year on year revenue growth, and contribution grew 3 times, 300%. I mean, the 3 times the contribution margin grow for us. So we are growing margin, we are growing absolute value, and we have reduced the cost. Well, then you know this, that payment leading to financial service business model is first time in India. International investors have been able to see this business multiple times, multiple places. So probably they were far more, I'd say, excited versus some of others who for the first time are listening this. So it's very fair for us to see questions like whether you can make money or not, whether you can make profit or not. Fair. I wish that our numbers speak louder than our words right now.
Do you think you could have erred on the side of being conservative, maybe price the issue a little bit more conservatively?
I don't know what the pricing is actually. I mean, pricing is something that we talk to investors, or investors chose to put up, and that is what we came with. And I can say that we believe that there is a lot of headroom for room for us to bring lot more data points, lot more business performance KPIs, which probably will bring different kind of confidence and different kind of investors to buy into it.
Do you think there is an element of truth to it, that private makes most money and public does not make so much money in digital companies?
The jury of whether private made more money in IPO and public did not should be seen with the same length of time that the capital has been deployed. And I'm fairly confident, and I'm nearly sure I would put the word public markets or this time on this company journey would bring far better results for the investors on the same length.
Would it be fair to say, or aggressive to say, that maybe 50% of your business will come from payments and mobile wallet, and the remaining 50% could come from, say, financial services plus e-commerce? Would that be fair, or is it too aggressive?
Whether the payment and commerce and financial services will split like half payment and half other, maybe financial services may just take a lot larger revenue unexpectedly because of the growth and the demand that we've seen on our platform. But it would be fair to assume that payment, which constitutes around 70% of our revenue, will not be such large because other revenues which are not yet kicked in would have started to take shape. Should I say that in 2 years will be 50-50? I mean, I think it could even, yeah, I mean, 50-45 or 55, some number in that range is a good fair number to ask, that other businesses, non-payment businesses, would have started to become majority of revenues.
You will still reach more and more people through your payments platform, but could the takeaway or the yield that you make or the profit that you make, that margin goes down over a period of time? Is there a risk?
So payment business makes money when merchant pays us, not the consumer pays us. In other words, it does not matter whether there is whose consumer app is working out in the market, us or our competition. Payment is when merchant is paying us. Now there are two kind of merchants whom we don't charge the MDR fees charges, because it is what grows the market, like you said it, that you can get more number of customers on your platform, and that business, I believe, is taking off in India thanks to the compounding digitization, people and comfort of merchants in the business. That business incidentally gives way to higher end of payment business where merchants pay us money. So imagine an organized retail, semi-organized shop, or a shop that has few more multiple shops, let's say a retailer or a brand, or talk about online merchants, even a small app developer to a large e-commerce company like Flipkart. All these companies have different requirements of payment. So in our payments business, we don't make, or our market share or revenue does not depend on consumer side of business. Actually, it is on the merchant side, and that is why we are the leaders in P2M, person to merchant consumer to merchant payments. Not we, our P2P business is led by bank, with Paytm Payment Bank, which is its own market leader by independently in itself. Now, the payments business model is led by merchants' interest and ability to pay us for the sophisticated or complex business or payment problem we are solving. I give you an example here. Imagine a particular electronic shop in RK Puram which is selling television or white goods. Now, making them available to take EMIs based payment, or issuing debit card based EMI, or issuing EMI on the device of payment that we've given, gives us higher margin or more revenue. And that means that the credit access on the counter is a big opportunity for us to solve in the payment. And businesses like this start to give us revenue. When it comes to UPI-led business model, which is 0%, it starts the journey of customer on the payment business, but payments maturity on our platform and payments maturity on merchant side happens when merchants take payments from multiple and more than just the UPI-based payment system. That means that Paytm is able to take an advantage of customers' maturity to a larger and superior payment plan. And that is true for consumers as you and I, and that is true for merchants like a small shop to a large organized merchant. Large organized merchant or small shop will like to take payments from everything possible, not just a UPI payment. Small shop, yes, because I have to pay no MDR and no, I'm just entering into the ecosystem. Definitely will take purely UPI only based system, and that is where they are. So Paytm's payment business, agnostic of what happens to UPI or not, continues to make money because it is on the services and solutions that large merchant, medium merchants take from us.
That was VSS with Udayan. You can catch the entire conversation on the weekend only on India Today at these times. So after that weak debut for Paytm, what should investors do at this point? Let me welcome in Sanjeev Bhasin and Chakri Lokapriya. Sanjeev, let me get your view in first on the mega listing this week and what really we should expect next if one bought into the issue, and after what we saw on listing day, how would you advise investors to strategize?
Everyone has been raising capital and there is a slew of opportunities, plus the money market became slightly tight. Secondly, the merchant bankers have left nothing on the room for the end investor to make money. So I think it was very, very highly priced. The promoter raised more capital than he had envisaged. For it was 13,000, then you went ahead with 18,000. I think that as a payment gateway, there are enough other opportunities on banks which are giving you very good, multiples on buying. And here the profitability will be in doubt for at least the next 3, 4, 5 years. So if you have a 5-year window and you're looking for the new age businesses, then I suggest you get into it. Otherwise, we would advise give it a miss.
Right, Chakri, what's your view? And would you go for a Paytm, or would you still have a different preference when it comes to the BFSI space?
Give a target for the simple reason that, of the various businesses that it has payments, now it's in financial services, it's going into, it has merchants who are now marketing mutual funds, gold loans, etc. And it also has this cloud services business, cloud business, which is also a valuable business. Now, all these businesses, if you notice, they depend upon a network effect. The more the customers you have, the more the merchants you get, the more both of them you have, more business happens, and therefore the net fee that accrues to a Paytm would increase, and so does, more importantly, the number of new revenue sources. I think that's the key to watch for, is to get more new revenue sources.
Chakri, thanks so much, both of you, for joining us. That's all we have time for on the show today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to tune in for that special conversation with Vijay Shekhar Sharma all weekend on India Today.